Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about Mercy of the Gods by James S.A. Corey. That is the same duo that wrote The Expanse, which is probably my second favorite sci-fi series of all time. So to say I was hyped for this book is an understatement. This was probably my third most anticipated book of this year, just behind Winds and Truth and just behind the fifth Bobiverse book, which I will be having a review out for here in a couple days. But like I said, this was a book I was immensely excited for, and let's just say, did it meet the hype? And I will say, I don't know if it met the hype because I think I had built it up to be so much more than probably any book could have been able to reach, but I will say I did really enjoy this book and I ended up giving it a solid 4-star rating. Now, I think something interesting here is that this book is very clearly not The Expanse, which sounds like an obvious statement, but I have seen some feelings around BookTube that this book had some more flaws. I think a lot of people went into it expecting more of The Expanse. I would say that The Expanse is a much more character-focused, character-based book, and another important thing to mention here is that in The Expanse, humanity is kind of on top, right? Humanity in The Expanse has expanded. We have colonized Mars. We have people living in the outer regions of the solar system. And in this book, the important thing to know is humans are the lowest level kind of creature that they could be. So let me go ahead and kind of set the plot of this book. We are introduced to a wide array of characters, which is something I will talk about here in a little bit. But basically, a alien race has come and is abducting all of these people from a planet that is not Earth. This is a human society that is living on another planet that has kind of forgotten anything about Earth. Probably not completely, but they are very detached from the early on part of humanity. And these aliens come and basically abduct everybody and refer to them as animals, and you can just kind of see that there's a level of disdain from the aliens that have come and captured humanity and what they think about humanity. And I found that to be a super interesting premise, but I do feel like that's an important distinction, that this is not humans on top. This is not humans for thriving. This is very much the opposite of that. And I feel like that's an important thing to note here, especially if you're coming into this from reading The Expanse. Now, I didn't actually come up with this, but this just made so much sense to me when I saw Murphy talking about this book. She mentioned that it reminded her a lot more of the Three-Body Problem. And that series is obviously very different from The Expanse, but when she said that, it was like the key going into the lock and opening the door. My mind was just like, that is such a perfect analogy, because if you know anything about the First Contact in the Three-Body Problem, you will kind of know what the First Contact is like here in Mercy of the Gods. So let's go ahead and talk about the characters in this book, because I think this is where most of the disconnect is coming with a lot of people that I have seen. There are too many characters in this book. And what I mean by that is we are introduced to a large cohort of humans that have been working on a scientific project about making organisms be able to interact with each other in an appropriate way. And I honestly can't even tell you how many characters there are. Is it like 8-ish or something? And it's just too many. I completely agree that this book would have been better if we had cut down on the cast. I honestly don't really remember any of the characters' names. I remember things about individual characters, and there are some interesting things going on with each of them. Well, not even each of them. There's interesting things going on with a few of them, and that's why I mean there's so many of them that could have just been completely left out, and we probably would have had a deeper emotional connection with some of the other characters, because I didn't really feel anything for the characters in this entire book. I didn't care if something good happened to them, if something bad happened to them. They were just kind of there, and they were just kind of there to move this plot along, which we'll get to here in a second, because the plot to me is what really makes this book shine. But like I said, don't really remember any of their names. I didn't feel bad for them. I didn't feel sad for them. I didn't feel happy for them. All of those emotions that if you are a character first reader, this book probably isn't going to work for you. Now, I have the luck of not needing characters like that. I have read a lot of science fiction books where characters really do take a backseat. They really are just kind of a vessel for an idea to be explored. And fortunately, that is something that has worked for me multiple times and again works here. But I feel like it's a giant warning flag that this is not The Expanse. This is not a character-driven story. This is a plot book, and these characters are completely forgettable. If the next book starts up and with a completely new cast of characters, I'm not saying it will, no spoilers for this book, but if that were to happen, that'd be fine, because I don't care about really any of the characters in this book, and I would be totally fine with something like that happening, which I do find interesting, because by the end of The Expanse, I was so attached to those characters. And I'm gonna make that comparison a lot, because I think most people coming to this book are coming to it because of the hype around The Expanse. I don't think many people are picking this up just out of the blue without having much experience with The Expanse. But these really did feel like such different kind of stories and the way they were trying to tell their story and what their story was going to be about. So I'm just going to hammer home one more time. The characters in this book, very lackluster, way too many of them, and I just did not care about them at all. Now, what I did care about was the plot here. And obviously I can't go too far into the plot because I want to keep this spoiler free so that you can go and experience this book for yourself, make your own opinion, all that fun stuff. But what I will say is anytime humanity is not the top dog when it comes to like a first contact kind of story, that is kind of the story I like to gravitate to. You could say I'm a little bit of a doomer when it comes to my idea of the universe, and if we were to ever experience alien life, I very much think it would go very poorly for us. If we were the ones to be visited, I think it would be horrible. If somehow an alien species was able to come and visit us here on Earth, I think they would just be so far technologically advanced us that they would view us as such a lesser being that it just wouldn't matter. And I think we have this idea of like Star Trek and these advanced people would come and they'd want to help us and all these things, and I think in reality they would come, probably try to strip us of all of the resources we haven't yet done ourselves and move on, maybe enslave the human race, who knows, all those things. That is kind of my philosophy on the universe, that it is better to stay quiet and not be seen than to be trying to be found. And some of that might come back to the three-body problem and some of the philosophies that are explored there, but it also might just be some like general mistrust on what's going on here. And that is an element of this book that I think is explored, not to a full extent, but enough that it made me interested. Now, I will say another thing that I really like in these kinds of stories is exploring a culture that is so foreign to our own Earth culture, or human culture, that when things don't make sense to a point that you're just so confused, but you know that there's meaning behind things. You don't 100% understand things, and you kind of it's like a mystery. It almost turns into a mystery novel where you're trying to figure out what things mean, what kind of cultural things are important. How do you interact with these new aliens and all of these things? I think that's what makes a book like this special, and that is what really sold me on this book. I don't care, once again, about the characters, but what I do care about is this alien race and what is going on with it. There's so many layers here that we barely just brushed the surface on, and that's another complaint I do actually kind of have about this book. I feel like we could have learned a lot more in this book instead of wasting time with these characters. Again, it's going back to those characters. But even with all that being said, I am kind of obsessed and I really want to know. I know Ben from Books with Genghis Khan absolutely loved this book, and when I watched him talk about it, he was talking about how he wishes he had book 2 right now, and at the point I was at in the book, I was like, I don't know. I feel like I'm not invested enough, and by the end of this book, I'm right there with him. I wish I could start book 2 right now because I need answers, and I think that is one of the best things a book can do, leave you wanting more, leave you wanting answers, giving you just enough to make you want to keep going. Like I said, I do wish we got a little bit more here in this book, but in general, I really want to get to the next one, and I'm sad that I have to wait now. So that is all I'm going to say here for Mercy of the Gods. I feel like there's so much more I would like to talk about, but I don't want to spoil anything. So if you have any spoiler thoughts or want to know some of my thoughts on things, definitely let me know down below in the comments. We can talk some spoilers down there. I'm always happy to do that, but I'm going to stop rambling here. But that's all for me, and as always, I hope you have a good one.